Joining me on this special broadcast is Advaita Kala, a writer of films and books and a columnist. Raghav Avasthi is a lawyer. Also joining me on this broadcast is Shehzad Khan, actor, and Ravira Bharadwaj for all perspectives on the story. But let me first lay out the broad parameters of this discussion. The question we are asking on this broadcast: have terrorists been glorified in IC814, the Kandahar hijack? Has role of Pakistan's ISI been whitewashed in this Netflix series? And let me take this one by one. Advaita Kala, let me kick off by asking you, have terrorists been glorified in IC814, the Kandahar hijack, in this Netflix series?
Well, I don't know about being glorified, but certainly humanized. And I think that is equally problematic because there should be no gray areas when it comes to terrorists. We know exactly what they stand for, what they're capable of doing, what they do, and how far they're ready to go to pursue their agenda. So I really don't think that there is any need to even glorify. You just have to not humanize them. And unfortunately, that is what has happened with this show. And that is why people are responding to it in such a negative manner, because this was obviously a very traumatic incident in India's history. Incidents like this do scar the psyche. That is why they are carried out. That's why terrorists carry them out. We all saw a couple of years later when 9/11 took place and thousands lost their lives, how the Americans responded. So these are very traumatic events. I'm speaking from an emotional and a psychological perspective. Now, you will never find Americans making a film on 9/11 or a series on 9/11 where even if they want to show governmental or intelligence failure, they will never humanize or glorify terrorists. That's just not acceptable.
Okay, Ravira Bharadwaj, respond to the criticism that this shows terrorists in a humane manner. And I'll come to that Bhola and Shankar and the Pakistani names, the real names of these Pakistani terrorists in a moment. But respond to this criticism that terrorists are being humanized through series like this.
No, I agree they shouldn't be humanized, but there's something called as creative liberty. In cinema, we do have a creative liberty where we are showing the different side and the actual storyline that actually took place during that time, because I know the filmmakers generally stick to the truth of the incident that happened. So I think it's just a way of showing the other side, but definitely I agree they shouldn't be humanized. But we can be open about seeing what exactly went down in their heads, in their minds, and that's why this incident took place. I think this was a filmmaker's style of telling people that you should understand the psyche also why this happened.
Raghav Avasthi, would you buy this logic that it's a creative license that a filmmaker has? Why should people object even if terrorists are being humanized? Maybe in the mind of the filmmakers, the terrorists had a humane angle to them.
There are two aspects here. First aspect is, of course, that there was an intelligence failure. There is no doubt about it. And if the web series shows that there is intelligence failure, there is nothing wrong. Having said that, what I have more of a problem with, of course, is the names that have been depicted. And secondly, the absolute whitewashing of the role of the ISI and the Afghan Taliban, which at that point in time used to be completely under the control of the ISI. Since then, they have broken free, or whatever it is, they are probably not under the control of the ISI. So I think the most insidious part of this film is when you take an intelligence agency that has been inimical to India since day one, and you are trying to show them as if they tried to save innocent lives. And just look at the manner in which the Taliban has been depicted, as if they are not the kind of terrorists that till now they don't allow women to be educated, and they have been depicted as if they were trying to help in some sort of a bona fide manner. I don't know about Advaita ji, but I've actually watched the whole web series. I don't know whether she has been able to get the time to do that, but after watching the web series and after also having followed the newspapers at that point in time, I have realized that this is nothing, this is absolutely nothing, but as Veer Sanghvi put it, Veer Sanghvi ji is somebody who's not much of a supporter of the BJP. He has said that it seems to be some sort of a whitewash of the role of the ISI. And all the blame is being put on Indian intelligence agencies, and they have been portrayed as some sort of bumbling idiots. So it's a bit like,
when Indian intelligence agencies goofed up really badly. that's so close after the Kargil War of 1999. And, I reported the Kargil War in 1999. I reported IC814 hijack. I reported the attack on the Indian Parliament. All of that, it was happening in that same phase. And the lesser said about India's intelligence agencies at that time, the better. But Shehzad Khan, whitewashing the role of Pakistan ISI, this is not just criminal, it is sin. And if this has been done, this is truly a sin that's been committed by the filmmakers here, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on your channel. First and foremost, I have seen the entire series, and I don't see any whitewashing of any terrorist group. They have been exposed, how cruel, how bad they are, how ruthless they are. And maybe the Taliban was playing a double game. That also can be seen in the series. It's a very well-made series. It shows what has happened that time, and it has hidden a lot of facts. The facts that a bureaucrat's wife was on the flight, because of which the commandos in Amritsar couldn't barge in and take over the plane. It shows that there was a very, very rich man from that they didn't show, but they showed an Englishman, for a very rich man from Switzerland. First time he always flew private jets. First time he was going in a public airlines, and he also happened to be there. And the Swiss government told the Indian government that we are ready to negotiate, we are ready to pay the amount, what they are asking for. So please, just see the thing, try to read, and we should try to learn from our mistakes. And it is the duty of the intelligence agencies that henceforth in future, such things should not happen with our citizens, especially of India, and with our airlines, and with the humans around us.
So you're saying ISI role is not whitewashed? You're raising certain facts that are not part of the series. So I will not say that. I will not say that. And I don't know whether it's because of the bureaucrat's wife that you claim that the plane wasn't stopped at Amritsar. The fact remains that the Punjab police chief then was directed to fire at the wheels of the plane. But he was too timid to do so by his own admission in a book. But let me bring in Raghav Avasthi. Raghav Avasthi, there is no whitewash of Pakistan's ISI, says Shehzad Khan. And you have your hands up. Response, sir.
Shehzad is right. As far as one aspect is concerned, Shehzad is actually right. What he is saying is that there was some sort of an intelligence failure, that is one, and that there were other people who were on the plane and their relatives were putting constant pressure on the Indian government in a manner that perhaps Israeli citizens would not do. So both these points are right, but ultimately we need to know. We need to know that it was the ISI and the Afghan Taliban that were working in cahoots with each other. They are being portrayed as some sort of humanists. So if you portray them as some sort of humanists, then allegations of whitewashing will definitely be leveled against you. And I am not at all saying that there was no intelligence failure, or that powerful and influential people did not put outsized pressure on the Indian government to negotiate with the terrorists. There is no doubt about it. I was 13 years old. I was old enough to know what was happening. There were people who were demonstrating outside South Block, and they were saying things like, "We don't care."
Not just outside South Block, outside what was then known as 7 Racecourse Road. Then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's residence, and there were families that were protesting there, and the role of a section of the media that was highlighting those protests, that cacophony that was built for early release. Let there be a happy new year. Let them be released. The amount of pressure that was mounted on the government, but governments are supposed to withstand pressure. Incidentally, when you speak of Israel, Israeli hostages, their families are putting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu government even today. But then those operations continue. It's the weakness of the government then, and that there's no denying that fact. But Adwaita Kala, I want to come back to you on that point. Has role of Pakistan's ISI been whitewashed in this Netflix series? Because that is a very grave allegation to make. We've had the country's current national security advisor, Ajit Doval, who has been quoted in the past saying that we would have negotiated a settlement but for Pakistan ISI's role. Adwaita.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that is also one of the reasons why there is this outrage, because it's, first of all, if you claim something to be based on true facts, then stick to the facts. No one holds a brief for the government of that day or the intelligence failure or any of that. Feel free to show that. No problem. The problem that people have is this clean chit to ISI and the fact that terrorists are, after all, humans. And he may have fallen in love with with an air hostess and said, take care of yourself. I mean, what are your priorities? This isn't only agenda driven, it's also dangerous when you go ahead and you represent things on such an influential medium like cinema or web series. And they're young, impressionable minds who are anyway looking for reasons to empathize and sympathize with these kind of actions that requisite even sacrificing your own life. So that's the kind of derangement you're dealing with when there are people who are motivated to carry out acts of terror. Now, if you go ahead and you add a humane angle to it, then you're playing with fire. And that is just not justified under any circumstances. See, he's done this in the past with that film Article 15, which was again ostensibly a true story, but the casts were changed. Right? Now, that may have happened because of political reasons or whatever the case may be. It was again motivated. Now,
so why is this creative license? Fair enough. You've raised a very pertinent point, and I want to bring in Ravira Bharadwaj to respond to this. Ravira Bharadwaj, why is this creative license taken in such a way? Because you're saying, okay, it's a filmmaker's creative license, but why a creative license to show ISI in good light, or to give creative, to give a humanist angle, that these terrorists are humanists? For heaven's sake, they were barbarians. They killed Rupan Katyal, and how? Stabbed a man who was coming back from his honeymoon. They stabbed him in front of his newlywed wife. Then the manner in which these people were kept as prisoners in Kandahar, the fact that Pakistan ISI was responsible for this, all of that whitewashed through this series.
I don't think so it's whitewashed. I think it's all, again, I'm telling you, it's creative liberty that we are actually taking the truth from what happened and showcasing it to the audience. We are trying to educate the audience what is happening. That is what cinema is all about. I think we take cinema too seriously and we always rip it apart when it comes to names, humanizing stuff or something. I think it's just a way of showcasing information in an entertainment way. I think we should be more focused on what is actually happening in the country than what a series is doing to some viewers around here. And there is always a creative liberty. That's why it's called cinema, fictional cinema. Even if it's inspired by true events, there is a creative liberty involved while making the show, because it's a show, and people are forgetting that it's a show and just getting too deep into it and bifurcating it.
Okay, so stop dissecting it so brutally, Adwaita, is the point. Raghav, I'll just come to you, Mr. Awasthi. I'm just coming to you. Adwaita wanted to respond first, Adwaita, and then I'm coming to you, sir.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a screenwriter. I write films. There is a line that you draw when you deal with true stories, especially true stories that have had emotional impact. As a writer, I'm speaking. Okay, even in the pseudonyms that were used, it's very easy to clear the fact on screen that these were pseudonyms. You could have had a moment where those two Hindu named characters, terrorists, refer to each other by their actual names. So that's a tell. And the audience knows that they have pseudonyms. But when you don't make those slight changes to a screenplay and you go by, oh, this was the way it actually happened, and then you give a, clean chit to the ISI and you humanize the terrorists, then everybody is going to be very suspicious of what the motives were, because these are easy fixes on a screenplay level, on a narrative level. But you choose not to do that. And I'm sorry, if something is based on true events, widely reported events, then you are going to be held to account for the things that you portray. Otherwise, just call it fiction and have all the creative liberty you want. No problem. Go ahead. I mean, make the terrorist a hero. That's your call. But if you're saying these are true events, then please understand, if the intel were bumbling fools, then these terrorists are not paragons of virtue either.
Okay, and look at the terrorist who was released. That man went on to become that Maulana of terror. Masood Azhar formed a terrorist organization called Jaish-e-Mohammed. They've killed thousands and injured thousands of innocent Indians since that 1999 December hijack. But Raghav Avasthi, let me just take this question about Bhola and Shankar with Shehzad Khan. Mr. Shehzad Khan, for the benefit of viewers, you know, the filmmakers may want to give a clean chit to Pakistani Muslim terrorists, but we want our audiences to know the truth. So the hijackers were Ibrahim Akhtar. Ibrahim Akhtar is from Bahawalpur in Pakistan's southern Punjab province. Shahid Akhtar Saeed, Sani Ahmad Qazi, Zahoor Mistri, they were all from Karachi, again in Pakistan. Shakir was from Sukur, again in Pakistan. But Shehzad Khan, none of this is mentioned in this Netflix series. The terrorists are only shown as Burger, Bhola and Shankar.
See, that must be the code names that they had kept. And they looked very immature. And ISI, nobody is trying to give any clean chit to ISI. What has happened, as one of my colleagues on the panel said, they have shown that, and they have shown it to the T. Every fact has been shown, but still, I would say a lot of facts have been hidden for the betterment of the series, which you can see all around YouTube. Now the survivors, the original survivors, the travelers on the plane, they are coming out and giving their interviews and their viewpoints. And from them, we come to know that how heartless these terrorists were. And it is clearly seen in the series that they were heartless people. The way they stabbed that young guy, that young married guy. So terrorists are nobodies. वो किसी के बाप के नहीं होते. So they should be treated like terrorists.
होते हैं, वो किसी के बाप के हो ना हो. But I think enough times we've been bled by Pakistan for even our film industry, with all their puppy and jhappi with Pakistanis, to at least say the truth that these terrorists were Pakistani. इतना बोलने में भी उनको क्यों शर्म आती है? I fail to understand. ये ऐसा क्या पाकिस्तान प्रेम है हमारी फिल्म इंडस्ट्री का?
पाकिस्तानी है, उन्होंने साफ साफ बोला है, वहां पर दिखाया कि they are Pakistanis. They're trying to hide their identities by taking other names and going to Afghanistan. Maybe there was a deal with Afghanistan and ISI that we will do this kind of a thing. Anyway, to cut the long thing short,
if you believe India's national security advisor, he has said so in as many words. That is the tragedy, that you know, some of our fellow countrymen don't believe in pursuing those facts. But go on, Mr. Avasthi, you wanted to make a point about Bhola and Shankar, the Hindu names or so-called Hindu code names, because even Ajmal Amir Kasab, and that is my bigger fear about this bogey of Hindu terror that is being floated by an ecosystem. Even Ajmal Amir Kasab was given this roli, this kalava that Hindus wear, so that it could be passed off as Hindu terror. They were given Hindu names. And this was, Mr. Avasthi, you would recall, in that Chicago courthouse, David Coleman Headley said so in as many words, that he had bought kalava from the Siddhivinayak temple so that the 10 Pakistani terrorists would wear that kalava, and when they are killed, they had Hindu identity cards and it would be passed off as Hindu terror. Mr. Avasthi, go on, make your point, sir.
Two more points. First of all, it's really asinine to say that it is just a movie. Movies can be very influential. Your father was posted in Kashmir. You would know what happened after this Lion of the Desert movie about Omar Mukhtar of Libya was released. And that was the catalyst for the spread of terrorism, one of the catalysts. The other point is that it's not just about giving them Hindu names. If you actually watch, I think it was Patralekha's character, and she's playing the air hostess, and at one point in time she says that she finds one of the terrorists hot. So what is it that you are trying to portray? Are you trying to give a message to impressionable young women and girls that somebody who's also a terrorist? This, you know, ties in with the point about dehumanization. And when I watched it, I was absolutely aghast. Tomorrow, like if there is a character who is a rapist or a terrorist or a murderer, is it possible, would you show in the movie that he's supposed to be found hot by women? Like, what is it? These filmmakers should have some sense of responsibility. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm very much a free speech absolutist. But such movies should be banned because they have the potential of causing communal tension, and they are portraying completely wrong values. There are a lot of people who would know about IC814 only through this movie.
Ravira Bhardwaj, respond to this. An air hostess, as Mr. Avasthi puts it, looks at a terrorist and says he looks hot or words to that effect. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Or is that humanizing a terrorist?
Again, I'm telling you, this is like if you're saying that a film promotes terrorism, it's like porn promotes rape. It's not like that. You just have to watch cinema based on cinema. Why are people taking it so seriously? If it's writing that it's saying like that moment of time, maybe the air hostess didn't know that that guy is a terrorist. While that thing was happening in real life, I think the filmmaker is trying to portray what happened that time and actually bring it on in our TVs so that we know what exactly went down, how someone was influenced during that time. Because maybe that air hostess found that terrorist hot and she didn't know that he's hot. And that's how she was like blinded by this fact. So this is, I think, totally based on true facts. It's based on it. It's not the exact reality that we are just holding it. Again, I'm repeating
Ravira,
it.
Ravira
If this
says,
promotes
maybe that air
terrorism,
hostess who was on board that flight found that terrorist hot. What's wrong with it?
This is exactly on that ground.
Yes, just like David Headley is also very hot, you know. I mean, come on, let's not get absurd about this.
Okay, I think
The
women
bottom,
were
the
calling
bottom
Dharma
line
hot,
is,
and he's
the
the
bottom
worst
line
serial
is,
killer
you know,
of all
that
times.
that
So I don't
you
think
love
so
to
that
copy
that's the filmmaker's
Hollywood.
fault.
Okay,
Please,
okay,
The audience
just
house
Ravira
is
and
on
for a moment,
9/11.
Adwaita, one by one.
Watch their cinema on 9/11 and you'll get some
Dharma
tips on how
came,
to treat
Dharma,
terror.
when Jeffrey Dahmer, when the documentary or the Netflix series on Dharma came, so many women were
That is
like,
also
he's so
very
hot, but he was the
that was
worst
also
serial
very
killer of all time.
problematic, by
That's
the
not
way.
a filmmaker's fault. That's the
That's
audience's
also very
perception of it.
problematic.
Now, there's no talk about that, and that's an American show on Netflix. Dahmer, I'm sure everyone must have watched it, and he was the most horrific serial killer of all times. And still people, and there are songs about it, about Dahmer being so hot. Isn't that weird?
Okay.
That's the audience's perspective.
It is.
That's the
Adwaita's
filmmaker's fault. The
responding, madam.
filmmaker is just trying to
And there is
make
a lot
everyone
of
aware about the
criticism.
horrific
There
incidents
is a
what
lot of
Dahmer did.
criticism on that show, including the show on Ted Bundy also. There's been a lot of criticism on it. Nobody is justifying that and nobody should. You have to be,
in America
you know,
as well,
not
not just India.
Come on.
It's
Going
not just
ahead
India
and
that
going on
audience
talking
react
about
on stuff.
this
It's
guy being
also
hot and
America.
all of that. It's absurd. It's absurd. It's absolutely
America that reacts on stuff, not just
Okay.
India. Like
But,
you mentioned.
You know, we're looking at this
Americans don't do
outrage,
that.
but Shehzad Khan, is this reason enough to summon? Is this reason enough to summon the Netflix India content, or is this a curb, an unnecessary curb on free speech?
It's an unnecessary curb on free speech. Sometime back, some party had an objection on Deepika's that costume which she had worn. Why is it orange color? Why are they looking at all these nitty-gritties? Let them, there are bigger things to look after, and they should look at that. And in this series, web series, it has clearly been shown the failure of the then intelligence agencies and, of course, the then government. So why
Okay.
to we just see
Raghav
the thing,
Avasthi,
see what has
Raghav
happened,
Avasthi, you're
and
a
if you want
free
to see
speech
it,
absolutist, and yet you want this series banned because Mr. Shehzad Khan very clearly says this is curbing free speech, summoning Netflix India content head.
I don't think this is a free speech issue at all. Tomorrow you want to go ahead in the public square and start yelling that the Nirbhaya rapists were really nice people and some of them might also be hot.
How can
Of
you
course,
compare
that's not free speech. That's not free speech. Yes, it is comparable because if you are portraying a terrorist as somebody who's appealing to women, then of course you are not only humanizing him, you are saying that somehow committing acts of terror is hot. That's the subliminal message that is going across to the audience. And it's not just a movie, as I said, for many people who didn't, because I think from that time, the news reports would also not be on the internet. For them, IC8, this web series is their only source of information about this hijack. So what is it that you're telling them? First of all, you're portraying what is widely reported inaccurately, and it is something that, as I reiterated earlier, has been called out by journalists who have no editorial leanings towards the BJP. Everybody knows. If you ask people in Pakistan, they will also tell you the same thing that the
I'm
ISI
not
was
going on
involved.
individuals. No, Raghav Avasthi, I'm least interested in going on individuals. I'm on the wider issue. I'm on the bigger issue of free speech, and I'm on the bigger issue of whether Netflix India content head should be summoned or the series, as you say, should it be taken off
I will
air.
explain
Adwaita
as to
Kala.
why he should be summoned. I will explain just for a moment. Netflix actually has a lot of control over scripting and all of these processes. So if they had some sort of filters, then those filters should have been employed. If they have not been employed, then since Netflix is making money in India through subscriptions, they bloody well tell us as to how whether it was something deliberate or whether it was an accidental omission.
Okay.
They should tell us.
Okay, Advaita Kala, is this a curb on free speech,
I think
summoning
it's a
Netflix
masterpiece
India
and
chief,
people should watch it.
content chief?
No, not
And
at all, not at
I
all.
don't
See,
think so.
because
Netflix should
because
get
the
summoned for this.
OTT platforms and the government of India has come to an understanding where they have taken on an undertaking on their own, where they have said that they will subscribe to certain values when it comes to their shows on TV. Now, if they are reneging on those promises that they have made, then I think, yes, they need to have a conversation with the government of the day, because that is what they agreed to themselves. Because initially there was going to be some sort of censor board for OTTs. And then OTTs came back and said, no, we have certain standards and values and we will stick to those. Now, one of those obviously has to do with terrorism and not, glorifying them, humanizing them, sexualizing them, and all of those things. So those are things they'll have to answer to.
Ravira Bharadwaj, even if those terrorists had code names Bhola and Shankar, even if it is being said on TV, replicating what was said on board that flight IC814, should the fact that they were Pakistani terrorists, all 5 of them, I want to once again reiterate for the benefit of the younger audience who are watching this. Ibrahim Akhtar was one of those terrorists. He was from Bahawalpur in Pakistan. Shahid Akhtar Saeed was from Karachi. Ahmed Qazi was from Karachi. Zahoor Mistri was from Karachi. Shakir was from Sukur. And the terrorists who were released, once again for the benefit of our viewers, 3 dreaded terrorists were released when IC814 was hijacked, including that Maulana of terror, Masood Azhar. Apart from that, Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh, who then abducted Daniel Pearl and killed him. And also Mushtaq Ahmed Zargar. All these points, Ms. Bharadwaj, needs to come out through a series so that people know IC814 was not about hot terrorists. It was all about bleeding innocent people and holding countries to ransom.
See, when you're keeping Hindu names, they disguise themselves with Hindu names like Bhola and Shankar, you were telling me. I didn't know that. And I'm sure like younger audience would know that. So it's a great way of giving information that this can also happen, that terrorists can also disguise themselves with Hindu names. So I think it's a great way of information. Again, I just don't get it. That why are we stretching this thing that their names are Bhola and
Because
Shankar?
the truth is not being told that they were Pakistani Muslim terrorists.
So me,
that
as a
truth is
younger
not being told.
audience,
Half
I
truth.
did not know that this happened during that time, that they were disguised with Hindu names. Now, as an audience, I have an information that this can also happen. And this actually happened, where they were disguised with Hindu names. So this is an informative platform that delivered an information, especially to the younger audience who didn't know about this attack. So how is that wrong?
Unless there is a far more devious game at play, Advaita Kala, because right from that time, 2 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks where Ajmal Amir Kasab was also given a Hindu name. The 10 Pakistani Muslim terrorists were all given Hindu names, Hindu identity cards, and David Coleman Headley, incidentally, Daud Gilani was his original name. I covered his trial in that Chicago courthouse, so I know that he bought that Roli Kalawa from the Siddhivinayak temple. It means there's a bigger game at play to get this bogey of Hindu terrorism in the country by some here and some across, Advaita Kala.
Yes, that's a persistent threat, mostly because these are people who carry out attacks with the full intention of even giving up their lives. So you are going to assume that they're going to be dead when they're found, and hence dead men don't tell tales, right? So you go by what they're wearing on their wrist, or if they have a tilak on their forehead. So this was, of course, a plan of subterfuge. I think I just want to point out here that the reason we know that these guys had Hindu names, were originally, Pakistani, is only because of the outrage, because the series in itself does not really make that clear. And that's what I said. It was an easy fix at the script level. It's an easy fix post the show when you roll credits to put that out there. There's so many ways to easily fix this, but it was not done. And that's why I question this.
Fair enough. We will continue to track developments on the story very closely. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.